Hey everyone, Eric Watson here, freelance writer, player of games, writer of words, recorder of videos, and tabletop role-playing aficionado. Welcome to another DM's Guild review, my written and video view series. Take a look at the adventures and supplemental material at the Dungeon Masters Guild website. This video I'll be reviewing the Bard subclass, College of the Crow's Nest, designed by R. Morgan Slade for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. A review copy has been provided for the purposes of this review. If you enjoy my videos, consider using my affiliate links for your online shopping and supporting me via patreon.com/Rogue Watson. Shouts to Platinum patrons Joe, Will, Tide Dancer, Manuel, Wizard, Princess, Christopher, Star, Liberty, Thomas, Ian, Captain Mike, Jeremy, Adam, and Leroy. And Gold patrons RPG, Papercrafts, Charming Grenade, Pretty Boy, and Yuma, Marcos, Dave, Vicente, Gilberto, Dead Lizard Lounge, Sam, Ross, Limpy, Spuds, Jerome, Fatboy619, Sklenia, Nick, Party, McButterpants, Blood Angel, Baroness, and the Fireworks Factory. Thank you all very much for your support. Pirates are a pretty commonly used archetype for player characters. Very classic adventuring motif. And I believe we've got at least one that already exists in 5e with the Swashbuckler Rogue. And typically when you think pirate, you're probably thinking a rogue or a fighter, some kind of usually dexterous-based martial class. But, definitely a not uncommon theme to explore. In this case, it's a bard subclass, obviously, because it's a college, which is usually not what I would think as being necessarily piratical. This focuses on a very specific area of what we think of as the classic pirate tropes. If you were checking a bunch of boxes for what pirates have or what they're all about. And pirates are all about treasure hunting, right? Burying treasure, finding treasure, and by treasure I usually mean straight up like gems and gold coins. But in this case, the best treasure is the friends we made along the way, but the best treasure is the magic items. And that is what this subclass has, is a sought treasure feature, which is the signature ability of this class. And it's a very, very clever, neat idea. I think it works well. It definitely creates some extra work on the DM's part, but this supplement actually includes some helpful guides in the form of example treasures, as well as sample adventure hooks on how DMs can incorporate, or the player could also offer, on how to incorporate those treasures into the campaign, because you're literally having to find these treasures as part of one of your class features. And the other big class feature uses familiars, which I guess you could think about the parrot on the pirate's shoulder, kind of classic. That's one of those checkboxes. So by focusing on those two aspects, mainly the treasure thing, but the familiar thing is actually used quite a bit also. And we're given a bunch of new familiars, and I actually really like the way it designs familiars, in that all of them have traits, and then at 6th level you get a really cool way of expanding that trait to the whole party, which is a really cool concept that frankly should have been a baseline ability for like anybody that had the Find Familiar spell, or an expansion of that. It's such a cool ability that it should not have been regulated to just this one subclass. So very, very well designed. It's also very professionally laid out. It's well written. It looks like a very good product. It also takes advantage of using a lot of non-D&D art, I believe, which I always appreciate that when it just uses stock art that has to do, like a lot of the animals, for example, just to be different, because at this point I can recognize a lot of the classic, DM's Guild stock art and other kind of fantasy art. So it bugs me, even though it shouldn't, but, to see the same kind of art again and again, and I appreciate this one does not use that same art. So College of the Crow's Nest is a bard subclass, which means you get to choose it at 3rd level, and you get three things. You get some bonus proficiencies, like, handling water vehicles. The two main things you get the Find Familiar spell, which you get a whole bunch of new familiar forms, which are laid out here. But, the idea is it's your companion, and who doesn't like having a familiar? It's honestly one of the cool features of D&D, I think. And you get the Sought Treasures and Ethereal Keepsakes ability. So the way this works is that at 3rd level, whenever you take a long rest, you are seeking a treasure, and the treasure is supposed to be balanced towards your level. So I believe it can be uncommon at tier 1, tier 2 it's rare, up to very rare quality at 10th level, and up to legendary quality at 14th level. So not quite the tiers, but pretty close to that. And you're always seeking this treasure, and it's up to the DM to actually create the treasure. as well as determine where exactly it is, what the roadblocks are. So it's a lot of extra work for the DM, which initially made me a little anxious about it, that a player would put that much, hey, one of my main class features involves like a huge amount of work for the DM. But it's a cool feature because I like the idea that you're seeking this treasure, and it's not just that you're trying to gather this treasure for yourself, but there's an interesting method of finding the treasure and then returning the treasure to its rightful place, which I think is kind of lost in a lot of the treasure seeking stuff, because a lot of times you're, stealing treasure from somebody, or you're finding long lost treasure or something, and then you're missing that final step of like, oh, do you actually want to like return this treasure from when it originally came from, or like the culture it came from, or the just single person it came from. So it's not quite it belongs in a museum, although some of them may, and it's up to the DM to determine where that treasure goes. So if you find the treasure, you can keep it, obviously. You can just use that treasure, and then you can designate a new one. And there's actually a system for every time you long rest, you can expend a Bardic Inspiration to determine if you're closer than you were last time you did that, as kind of a hot or cold thing. So you don't quite get like a magical compass showing you where it is, but it's supposed to give you some idea of like, are we actually going towards my treasure? And this really feels like it's a side quest that determines like the entire character's personal quest arc, which is something I'm always in favor of, is to just seek out these treasures. But here's the interesting twist. You can obviously take the treasure and you can keep it, but as an additional step, you can return it to either its owner or its rightful resting place, or whatever the place that it should be at. If you do that, then you get an Ethereal Keepsake, which is a carbon copy of that item. So you don't, which is important. You don't lose the item. You can keep it as an item that you can magically shunt into your pocket dimension that the familiar comes into. Which is kind of the same concept that I think the Hexblade maybe uses this. I don't know if Eldritch Knight does, where you can like shunt items in and out from existence, basically. So you can do that with this magic item. And for every one of these keepsakes you have, you get a permanent +1 to charisma. So you want to not only find these items, but to then return them as a second step to their rightful place. And then you get a copy of the item that you can magically whisk away if you need to hide it or something, or just keep it in an ethereal inventory, basically, and get a permanent +1 bonus to your charisma, which is a cool system. So it rewards you for finding the item, and then it rewards you for returning the item, which is really neat. And there's a neat part at the end of the breakdown here where it shows, hey, here's some sample adventure hooks, and then some sample ideas for, here's where items could be and here's where items could go. Yes, it's more work on the DM's point, and maybe the player could work with that a little bit, but I'm in favor of it because I think the mechanics of it work really well without being too unbalanced. Because I think in general, you're not going to be throwing these items at your player, probably not even every level, but maybe, 1 or 2 per tier. Probably just balance it out where the bard should get at the same rate as everybody else. It's just that it takes, their quest is that it's going to take, a separate journey or something to go get the item, and then maybe a separate journey to actually return the item, and then you get your full bonus from that, which is cool. The other thing you get are the familiars, which you can get one at 3rd level, and you've got a whole bunch of options, which some of them are goofy and funny, and some of them are just kind of like, okay, because we already have a lot of familiar options in the player's handbook, right? We've got a lot of the classic like wolf and owl and stuff. This one you've got like chameleon, electric eel, possum, otter, bizarre little animal critters that armadillo. I'm from Texas. Who the hell would want an armadillo as a pet? I don't know. But here's the thing. At 6th level, which is a really cool feature, you can use one of your uses of Bardic Inspiration, which I'm always in favor of mechanics that use that class's resources on top of everything else. Like, for example, if you use like sneak attack dice to do something, it's that instead of adding more things, just use the stuff the class already has, and this does that by expending Bardic Inspiration to do all the things. Thumbs up for that. At 6th level, you can expend a use of Bardic Inspiration to create a 30-foot radius around the familiar, and everybody within that radius gets the familiar's trait. And if you notice, all of these little critters have their own little traits. So, for example, the opossum can play dead. The chameleon, of course, can do the camouflage with your surroundings thing. The armadillo has a special like guard move. A lot of them have to proc off of like taking the ready action, which is kind of interesting. You could kind of go into Overwatch mode, but like the armadillo like doesn't take damage in that case. The axolotl is immune to poison, disease, and petrification effects, so just purely defense. One of them is like I think the spider monkey is if you dash, you get an additional 15 feet of movement. None of these are like game-breakingly powerful auras in any means, but they're just kind of nice little additions. Some of them can help you in water, some of them can help you in like dim light, just little buffs that you can turn on in both, and some of them could be useful for exploration and in combat, but of course you have to have your familiar, and suddenly where that familiar is located and if they're alive or not matters a lot, because that determines that, buff of an aura you get. So, and the whole aura lasts for an hour. So I just think that's a really cool concept for familiars that I would love to see used on all familiars, not necessarily just this class. And I think the designer realized that, because the one new feat that's added at the end of this supplement is the familiar aura feat. Basically, if you have the find familiar spell, then you gain that ability to expand that trait out to 30 feet for an hour. I don't know if you have to expend. I think it's just per rest that you can do it in. Expend a first level spell slot. That makes sense. So, because if you find familiar, then you're most likely you're a spellcaster then, because that's a first level spell. At 6th level, you can add the number of bardic inspirations you get by the number of keepsakes you possess, so it keeps building on that. At 14th level, you gain the ability as a reaction, if somebody's going to expend one of your bardic inspiration die, your familiar can actually pull out one of your Ethereal Keepsake items and then use that item in conjunction with the player, depending on what's going on there. So if the player is, in other words, making an attack and trying to expend a bardic inspiration to add to the attack, then the item could help them if it's like a sword, +1 sword or something, or if it's a ring or could help them with a saving throw or whatever else. There's a lot of kind of nebulous rules depending on the item and depending on what's going on, but the idea is your familiar can pull out an item and then you can add that item to the effect of the person using the bardic inspiration. So I just like that it has two main features, which is the familiar and the treasure, and it front loads those features at 3rd level, and then everything builds upon those two features while also utilizing the bardic inspiration as the resource, which is all, for me, just perfect class design. That's exactly what I'm looking for. It uses the resources we've already got. It adds signature abilities. It front loads those abilities, and then it builds on them and expands what you can do with those abilities as you level up, which is all just perfection in terms of what I like to see when I'm looking at class design. So you get your familiars here. I was worried, when I read about the treasure finding thing, I was like, boy, that is a lot of work for a DM to try to come up with these whole side quests, basically, that your little subclass is about. If you don't get these side quests, you should not play this character class, because that's a huge part of it, is you being able to find these treasures and then add them to your ethereal keepsakes and then get that, +1 bonuses and then be able to pull those items out, and all your abilities like build on that. So if you're not getting these, you're not utilizing your class. But that's a lot of work for a DM to try to come up with all those extra little features. Helpfully, the product includes some sample ideas. So, and in some cases, it could be it's not as cut and dry as you're finding an item in this location and then you have to return it to its rightful place at this location. Sometimes it's like a thief currently has that item and you have to maybe do a quest for that thief to get the item back, and then you can return it to its rightful place. In this case, it gave the example of maybe it's a kind dragon that you have to return it to. Or it could be a warrior has the item, it belongs to them, but they're not worthy of it. So you have to maybe go on a quest with them and prove that they are worthy of their own item, and then you get a copy of that item as your ethereal keepsake. And sometimes it might be like there's an item that has been grave robbed from a tomb or a crypt, and the person didn't even make it out of the dungeon. It's just sitting somewhere else in the dungeon, and you find, your treasure seeking ability finds the item early, and then your quest is actually just to make it deeper into the dungeon and place it in the right spot. So it could just be, instead of having 2 locations, there's just 1 location. So this was really helpful, because initially I was, thinking of the obvious, which is, okay, you got to find, the item in this dungeon and then return it to this person or this faction or this other area. But instead, there's actually a lot of different ways you can interpret how this works, and it really frees up the DM for a lot of different ideas on how to use this side quest in a really fun way, and there's advice for how the bard should be looking for things and how the DM should be incorporating it. And if you just want to have some helpful randomized tables, you've got some D8 tables for where the treasures are and where they could be. The other thing you can do as a DM, if you really want to have fun with it, is you can make it so once the item has been returned, it actually gains new abilities on that item. Once it becomes the Ethereal Keepsake for that bard, for the College of the Crow's Nest, it gains new abilities. And sometimes it might just be a better, like if it's armor, it might get another +1 armor class bonus, or it might give you a additional cast of one of its spells, or you could expand it to make it have a whole nother effect on there. And there's a whole D20 table of example things you could add it on there just once they return to it, which would be another incentive. So you're already getting that +1 charisma bonus, you're getting the ability to magically shunt the item back and forth, and now if you return it, especially if you add like a really more complicated, difficult step to it, that would be a really fun reward idea. I just like the idea of items that unlock new abilities in general. I think that's a fun idea. And in this case, it's incorporated into the bard's like main feature. So really, really cool. Finally, we get some example new magic items. We get that one new feat, and we get a few new spells. And, the whole time, the pirate theme is there, but it's... You could, adventurers are treasure seekers in general, like, and the familiar thing, maybe not necessarily a pirate theme. So the pirate theme is actually a little bit, even though it's called College of the Crow's Nest, which feels like, and maybe not necessarily, okay, obviously not all crow's nests are pirate themed, but I can't get that out of my head. If you're on a sailing ship, then you've got the pirate theme as an adventurer, but, you're just sailing around exploring. I get that. But I didn't necessarily feel that theme was fully realized in the character build in terms of, because you could be a rogue treasure seeker easily, and obviously wizards have find familiar. So, but here is where the designer really went, okay, we're gonna really hammer down that sailing Age of Sail theme, basically, with flintlock pistols and shovels and pickaxes. The spells involve like mutinies and being able to like order people by switching people around to take an attack. They call the captain's prerogative as a reaction, which is funny. My only complaint, which I hate to complain about extra stuff because this is all kind of extra things. I like the pirate. I like the sailing. I keep saying pirate. I like the Age of Sail theme here. For some reason, the designer used the exact same concept of a magic item and copy and pasted that several times. We've got a shovel of the sought, pickaxe of the sought, I guess sought in terms of seeking treasure sought, cutlass of the sought, whip of the sought, flintlock of the sought, and they all basically work the same, which is you can choose to exhaust yourself, which is crazy because you don't see that as a magic item feature. If you choose to take a level of exhaustion, then you can cast different spells, and some of them have different abilities too. The whip has +5 to grapple checks. The pickaxe can do extra damage to objects. They have a little bit extra features. The main thing is, once it becomes an Ethereal Keepsake, they all have additional things they can do, which is nice, but that could have been attached to more interesting magic items. I just didn't like the idea. I'm not a fan of the exhaustion thing in general. That's a tricky thing to ask players to do to activate a magic item, because exhaustion can be extremely debilitating. And I don't like the fact that most of them are just copy pasted with the exact same like magic items and features. So I would have liked to see more variety in the magic items. There are a couple that are a little more interesting. The Tricorn of Composure, the Boots of the Deckhand, which keeps you your feet planted so you can't get moved around. The Tricorn actually allows you to remove levels of exhaustion, which kind of goes into obviously a combination with the other one, but I'm not a big fan of the magic items causing exhaustion anyway. So I like the theme. I just didn't like the actual execution of these items, which is my only really complaint. I did like the spells, and of course the one feat, which I mentioned before, is the being able to use that awesome aura feature of the familiars, which I think is cool and should be built into the Find Familiar spell in general as an ability. You can take that as a feat, which I think is fun, because who doesn't like having fun little familiars around that grant you all these auras, and suddenly everybody likes your dumbass little familiar. So I think that's a neat idea. So pretty positive overall. Let's go over my pros and cons for the College of the Crow's Nest Bard. Pro, Sought Treasure is a fun built-in side quest mechanic, and familiar auras make expanded familiar choices more strategic. This class has two main things going for it, and they're both really, really good. I appreciate the Sought Treasures, the Ethereal Keepsakes, how that works, and I really like the way that familiars are incorporated here. pros, and so what could have been a con is that, oh man, that puts a lot of work on the DM, but instead it's a pro because we get sample treasure and adventure hook ideas. We get that full 2 pages of ideas that really went far beyond what I was thinking in terms of how to put treasures and where to go. You know, all those different ideas where you know, you just have to return a keepsake to maybe a family's descendant, and that unlocks it, or, you know, the warrior needs to feel worthy of the item. And then, of course, the obvious ones where you find an item in a shipwreck and it has to go, you know, somewhere else. But those are some really, really fun ideas, and I appreciate that those are there. It really helps me as a DM try to figure out how I would incorporate this for a player. And I did include a pro as a pirate-themed magic items and spells. I like the theme. I think that's really fun because that's obviously like what looks on the cover, which is really fantastic cover art. Where you get that, you know, Age of Sail exploration theme, and you've got the flintlock pistol, the tricorn, you know, those are all really cool and would fit that character very, very well. But then my one con is that most of these magic items are actually just kind of uninteresting copy-paste jobs of each other, and I don't know why. Just kind of a little misstep there where it could have been really interesting how all these magic items worked. I still appreciate they all had the Ethereal Keepsake like expansion abilities on them, where they all got better for the college bard, specifically the Crow's Nest bard. But as written, they just weren't very interesting, and I don't like the exhaustion mechanic either. Final verdict: by focusing on the treasure hunting aspect of the classic pirate archetype, the College of the Crow's Nest Bard features a rewarding method of finding and returning magical treasure. Thank you to everyone for watching this video review. You can see my written review at roguewatson.com. You can support my work at patreon.com/roguewatson. You can follow our own D&D adventures here on my YouTube channel. Thank you.